Our last scientist, before we have a surprise guest from South America, is Dr. Robert Schneider, who is director of the National Institutes of Health-funded Institute of Natural Medicine and Prevention. He's received over $24 million from the NIH to investigate the effects of Transcendental Meditation on cardiovascular disease.
Thank you, Dr. Hagelin, and good afternoon. Today I'd like to speak with you about a brief review of research on prevention of cardiovascular disease in youth with the Transcendental Meditation program. And if we can have the slides on the screen, please. So if we could back up one, please, for the title slide. So our topic again today is prevention of cardiovascular disease in youth with the Transcendental Meditation program, or Prevention Begins Within. Next slide, please. In terms of background, there are tremendous demands for a new approach to healthcare in young people today. First, the leading cause of death, disability, and healthcare costs in the U.S. today is CVD, or cardiovascular disease. Second, the cardiovascular disease process begins in childhood. And childhood risk factors, for example, high blood pressure, obesity, and diabetes, which are epidemics in children today, track into later adulthood. And finally, at least 50% of all children in the United States have one or more risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Next slide, please. For these and other reasons, a number of investigators have begun to scientifically evaluate the effects of stress reduction with the Transcendental Meditation program on cardiovascular disease in youth. This is a study done by Dr. Barnes at the Medical College of Georgia, showing the effects of Transcendental Meditation on high blood pressure in high school students. And as you can see, before and after the intervention of 2 months, there were significant reductions in blood pressure in the Transcendental Meditation group. Next slide, please. And when Dr. Barnes looked at the mechanism by which this might happen, he found reduced reactivity to stress, that is, reduced physiological reactivity to stress, associated with the lower blood pressure in these students. Next slide, please. My colleagues and I at the American University conducted a randomized controlled trial on the effects of Transcendental Meditation on blood pressure in high-risk college students. And this slide shows the results of that trial. As you can see, there were reductions in both systolic pressure and diastolic blood pressure, both statistically and highly clinically significant, associated with a 50% reduction in risk for adult hypertension in these young people. Next slide, please. This shows the study of changes in psychological stress in these same students. And as you can see, there were reductions in total mood disturbance, anxiety, depression, and anger and hostility, as well as improvements in emotional coping and behavioral coping. And furthermore, these improvements in mental health were correlated with improvements in blood pressure, and therefore with physical health, the mind and body going together very clearly. Next slide, please. According to an article in the New England Journal of Medicine and Circulation, prevention of cardiovascular disease is particularly important in view of the possibility that the current generation of children may be the first to have shorter life expectancies than their parents. Next slide, please. Therefore, Resnicow and others recommend that school-based cardiovascular disease prevention programs have the potential to make substantial contributions to improving child and adolescent health status. And finally, in conclusion, if the funding and institutional support to develop more effective programs can be obtained, and if they can be effectively disseminated and implemented, school-based cardiovascular disease prevention programs can have significant impact on the nation's leading cause of death. Prevention begins within. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are nearly out of time, but of course I wanted to mention this is the tip of the research iceberg. Over 600 studies have been performed and published at 250 independent medical schools and universities on the health benefits and also benefits for optimal brain functioning and brain development through transcendental meditation.